Hey everybody, Jeremy here from Gnomebot Studios. Welcome to another Grit Fantasy RPG video. Today's topic will be combat potentialities. Now this video is going to cover rules for some possible situations that may occur during combat while playing Grit Fantasy RPG. It's not a long list of things, but when I was writing the book, I felt that these were the most common and most important rules to put in. And I kept them absolutely streamlined so that they're easy to digest and use on the fly. And once you kind of get a gist of what I cover in this video, you should be able to make decisions on the fly if anything odd comes up that is not related to these. And of course, with these, you can modify them as you go if you need to. This is just basically a framework or suggestion of how to deal with these potential things that come up. I figured the first thing I want to do is dive into the book here and get into talking about some damage first. So I'm not going to go to the combat potentialities page first. We're going to move to damage. So this is in the core rules. And this is going to be page 15. Okay, like the first section. So, just to give you a heads up, knowledge about how damage works is a good thing first to kind of, before we get into the other stuff here. So I just want to go over the 4 different types of damage that can occur in Grit. The first one is static damage. So it's a difference between a roll and a target number. So there's 4 target numbers that could be chosen by the GM, and depending on how the player rolls, the player's roll is kind of calculated by the difference between the roll and the target number. Okay, so the example given here is Grim fires a bow at a troll. A static prowess roll is made with an average difficulty of 6. The total results in a 9, and the troll takes 3 points of damage. So it's just the difference. Super streamlined, straightforward. Next one is opposed, and that's the difference between 2 contesting rolls. So the GM and the player roll against each other, and the highest roll wins, and the difference is how much damage is done. So the example here is an orc swings an axe at Grim, who then counterattacks with his sword. An opposed roll is made. The orc rolls a 6, Grim rolls 10. Grim succeeds and delivers 4 points of damage to the orc. Again, super straightforward. That's just how opposed rolls work. So static and opposed happen the most often in games. The next one is fixed, and this kind of leans more on the GM side of things. So it's a predetermined single amount. So the example is Grim is stabbed with a poison needle while picking a lock. He receives 1 fixed damage from the needle when he fails a valor roll against the poison. For the next 3 rounds, he will receive 1 fixed damage from the poison's ongoing effects. So obviously there was either a set number of rounds or a D4 roll associated with that. That's not really that important. But the important thing is that the GM decided that it dealt 1 fixed damage and 1 fixed damage for the consecutive rounds. So again, super simple. That number is usually not above 3. It's like 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 max on that. And again, it's up to the GM. Another thing is straight damage. So this is a single die roll. And again, this is leaning into the GM side of things. The GM determines a die that is used, D4, D6, D8, D10, or D12. And that is applied. So in the example here, Grim attempts to move through an area with falling debris and fails his prowess roll. The GM rolls a straight D6 die with a result of 3. Grim is dealt 3 damage from the debris. Okay, again, super straightforward. So it's basically a prowess check on the player side, and then the GM just rolls damage. Okay, and the GM will determine that either on the fly or have already written that in their notes. Now, I'm not going to go into soak with armor and shields. That just doesn't apply to what I'm talking about tonight. So we're going to move into page 16, which is the combat potentialities. And you could see there are not many here. There's only 8, not even a full 6x9 page. And that I did on purpose. Okay, so I'm going to go through each one of these because they're probably the most important things, like I said, out of all the ones that I had written down before I wrote out this book. So one of the biggest ones here is the first one, brawling. So these are hand-to-hand attacks that do not use a melee weapon. So it's like punching, kicking, headbutting, that kind of stuff. Martial arts. So all of that stuff deals half damage rounded up. So in the case of like a static roll, if they rolled against an average target number, let's say they had to beat a 6, they rolled a 10, so they would do 4 points of damage would be normally done if it was a weapon, but they do 2. Okay. And so you're going to notice there's a theme here. So anything that's just kind of odd, like an odd attack, brawling's not odd, but if you're using an odd weapon, like let's say a mug, this is going to be covered in another thing, but anytime you feel like it's not a full melee weapon type of attack, it could be just half damage rounded up, and it's always half damage rounded up, Okay. All right, so the next one is disarming. So this can be an optional thing that a player wants to do. It also could be what a monster does. Maybe they want to incapacitate the characters and not outright kill them. So it has to be declared before a melee attack or counterattack is made. No damage is dealt. And the affected weapon lands up to a short distance away. Okay, that's up to you to determine in the moment. That's a GM thing. So this is all more GM-sided, guys. This is important to know, from a player's perspective, but the GM is dealing with a lot of this. So huge weapons and innate weapons such as claws cannot be disarmed. So like if they have this huge, massive, like two-handed battle axe, probably not likely that they're going to be able to disarm that. At that point, you have to make a decision. Maybe it's a little more difficult, and also like claws are built in, so they can't be disarmed, That's pretty straightforward. Grappling is another thing that happens. And this is kind of along the lines of brawling. So it works like a melee attack. So you have to succeed on a might roll against a target equal sized or smaller. So you can't like grapple a huge dragon. You could probably try to hold on to them, but to like grapple them to, not allow them to do anything, that's a whole different story. It has to be equal size or smaller. So no damage is dealt, but the target cannot move or make physical actions while grappled. Must be maintained with a might roll each round. And so that can look like an opposed roll each round, as the target attempts to break free. So the target may make an opposed might or prowess roll to attempt an escape. So might or prowess. So it's either you're using brute force, or you're just like trying to wiggle your way out, and that kind of gives players options based on their character, how they would play. The next one is a little less common, but it's called hunkering down. So this is treated as a miscellaneous action. So on a character's turn, they could take this action to hunker behind a shield or solid structure. Okay, so they just take their full action to just like, boom, hide behind that shield or hide behind that stone pillar and really make it a defensive thing. So all attacks made against a hunker target are hard. So not only is that more difficult to do, but it also lands less damage against that target. Okay. Next one is improvised weapons. So this kind of relates to brawling, like I had mentioned before, these weird kind of things that can happen. So non-weapon objects and thrown melee weapons. So like if you have this giant battle axe and that's not really designed to be thrown, if you chuck that, it only deals half damage rounded up. So, and non-weapon objects like a rock or a mug, like I suggested before, or like maybe a chair or bar stool, that kind of stuff, they're not going to do as much damage as a normal melee weapon would. Okay. The next one doesn't come up often, but I wanted to put this in there because I feel it's important. So using a weapon in each hand does not grant extra actions or damage and negates the use of a shield. So I feel strongly that there's this idea out there. I think it comes from video games that if I, have two swords in my hand, like one sword in each hand, I suddenly can attack twice per round and I do all this extra damage. I think it's kind of BS. Honestly, I don't think it's realistic. I know this is a fantasy game and it's abstracted stuff, but I don't feel that it's realistic to do extra damage and just automatically have these extra attacks because you have two weapons wielded, right? Reality is, and I've done some research, is you're going to use one weapon as a parrying type thing and another weapon as an attack type thing, right? Honestly, using a shield and a weapon together is a far better combination than two weapons together, unless like you're very highly skilled. So anyway, I put that in the book because I wanted to make that clear, that if you use two weapons, if you have two daggers in your hand, you may look like a complete badass, but it's not going to give you any extra damage or extra actions. Okay. All right. Number 7 is shield bashing. So if you have a shield, you can use this as a melee weapon. However, it acts like an improv weapon, right? So it deals half damage rounded up. However, if it's successful, the target falls prone. Okay. Falling prone basically just, you're on the ground and you have to kind of take your movement to get up. All right. So shield bashing is cool. Shields are cool. They have really great properties that give you soak from damage, and you can also sacrifice them to negate one attack. All right. Last one is surprise attacks. So the attacker must have successfully hidden before the attack is made. So ahead of time, they should have planned this out to be making a stealth roll, which is prowess, to kind of hide and get ready. If the target remains unaware, the attacker makes an easy static attack roll against them that cannot be countered or dodged. So it's basically, if you are completely hidden and they're not aware of you, you can make an easy static attack roll against them that they can't do anything about. This cannot be repeated against the same target or other targets who have witnessed the attack. So this is not something you could just spam over and over and over and over again. It's like this one shot kind of deal where you're hiding in the bushes there, waiting for the enemy to come in. They're not aware of you. You jump out, boom, easy static attack against them. And you potentially, are going to hit them easier, and you're going to do more damage. So pretty straightforward, but something just needed to be said there with that. And that, covers the 8. There are, of course, a lot other things out there that probably could potentially happen, but hopefully this gives you kind of a framework to work from that will give you an idea of how to kind of make things up as you go as the GM that, makes sense. So I would say that if something comes up that's not on this list, just use common sense and don't be afraid to ask the group. If you're totally unsure, bring it up to the group. Like, how do you guys think this should be ruled, And usually that comes out pretty quick and you can resolve it. If you've watched my previous video on the Mighty D4, you can maybe involve the Mighty D4 in that decision-making process. That can always be helpful. So anyway, that was something I just wanted to show as a kind of a set of rules that are in the book. Obviously, all those things can be slightly tweaked to fit your flavor of your games, but they're there for your reference in case you need them. Okay. So anyway, this is just a short one that I wanted to go over because I think it's important. And that is all I have to say about that. So anyway, take care of yourselves. Hope you guys are all out there having fun with your games, and roll those dice.